and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid and vapid and lying forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the depths of the Middle Swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday, 2 days before I get out of the Middle Swamp. You know, it's almost like Christmas. And, you know, it's funny because you when you have a vacation or a trip planned, the only thing you can do is count down to how long it is before you get to go on the trip. But when you're in the Middle Swamp, that works in reverse. You count down how many days it is until you get to go home and get out of this really gray water place. And so for me, my friends, it's 2 days. And then I get to go back to see the lovely Christine, the puppies, and be in the Cowboy State Politics studio. I can't wait. Now, I had intended to take this installment of the program in an entirely different direction. I intended to start with something of a giant victory last night in the House of Representatives. And you know what? I'll give you a little teaser of that. Hold on just a second. I mean, see, this is important because this is David's favorite thing. Well, not favorite thing. The one that terrifies me the most. The Convention of States. So last night, it was defeated by a final vote of 21 to 28. My friends. That's right. So the Convention of States bill, which terrifies me every session, met its demise last night by a final vote of 21 to 28. And, you know, this one, a lot of people don't pay attention to it, and they should. But if you've been a long-time viewer of Cowboy State Politics, you know how dangerous I think this thing is. And so they saved it right until the end. And, you know, they had me praying right up in the gallery, which I would have been doing anyway. Yeah, so it died 21 to 28, and I'll get to that a little bit later on in the program. I've got some sound bites for you from the debate on the floor, but there's a lot of things to talk about this morning, and I hope that I can get them all in a morning. But first, I have to cover this, and it never fails. The stories that really tick me off show up. I find them right before I come on to talk to you. And I think I want to begin this segment by just asking a simple question. Why is it that everybody hates the press? Why do people hate the media? It's because they lie. They lie continually, and they try to convince you of things that are not true. Well, on this morning, almost front page of the Sheridan Press, they used a picture of a dead police officer, Sergeant Krinke, to push a fake political narrative, to say that that all of the Wyoming sheriffs opposed the SAPA bill, and they have a photo of Sergeant Krinke there. Now, I didn't personally know the man. but I know a lot of people in Sheridan that did. And if you lived in Sheridan during that time, if you knew anybody around Sheridan that lived there, you know how big of an impact this event had on the entire community. And it is absolutely outrageous that the Sheridan Press would use the picture of a dead police officer to push a political narrative. Now, let me just show you what I'm talking about here before I continue on with what they actually said, which is also a bunch of lies. But anyway, let's see here if I can show this to you. Video pad document. Okay, we're just going to do this. Again, just hold on. It's going to look a little bit weird for a minute. Okay, so here is, and you know what? We should just do this full screen. If I can. Maybe that just turned it off. Nope, there we go. All right, so look at this. The Sheridan Press. All Wyoming sheriffs oppose Second Amendment Protection Act bill, alleging that it would have a chilling effect. And there's the picture of Sergeant Krinke. His death had absolutely nothing to do with this bill. In fact, it would have done the reverse. You see, the point is that the SAPA bill protects your constitutional rights to own a firearm. The guy that killed Sergeant Krinke, he was a felon. He doesn't follow the laws anyway. And his death had absolutely nothing to do with this bill. So I sent a request for comment to the editor of the Sheridan Press. Her name is Ashley Snoozy. Yeah, I mean, what an unfortunate last name. And Ashley, if you're watching this morning, I highly suggest that you send me a comment because the Open Range Record is going to go live with the story at noon about how you are absolutely deceiving people. And it's absolutely outrageous that you would use the picture of a dead police officer for political purposes. I've got a police officer in my family. Most people do somewhere along the line. And just think about how you would feel, how his family feels, how his wife feels about her hometown paper using his picture for something that is absolutely not true. You should be ashamed of yourself, Ashley Snoozy, and the Sheridan Press. And I don't care if, and this is what the Wyoming media does. They use this thing called the Wyoming News Exchange, right? Which is they all put all their stories into one pot, and then everybody can print anything, so that it appears that all of the drivel that they're printing in their paper actually came from them. But it doesn't matter. You put the headline there, you put the picture of a dead cop on your website, and you are using it for political purposes. Oh man, I'm pissed off. All right, so let's go into the article. The title of it is, All Wyoming Sheriffs Oppose the Second Amendment Protection Act Bill, alleging it would have a chilling effect. Yeah, as if protecting people's constitutional Second Amendment rights is their number one priority. By the way, Sheridan Press, the picture you ought to be running is of Sheriff Levi Dominguez and Sheridan Police Chief Travis Koltiska on the front page. You should run it in this picture. I've got a picture of this. This is great. You want to see this one? This is the picture. Let's see here. Let me put it together. This is the picture that you ought to be showing. And just hold on just a second. I'm almost there. You see, this is why Agent 29 needs to stop doing all of his legislative stuff and just get back to work here. I mean, back to work on the program, because then I wouldn't have to push all of these buttons. Let's see here. Yeah, let's do that. Here we go. So, Sheridan Press, this is the picture you ought to be printing. This one, right on the front page, where you have Sheridan County Sheriff Levi Dominguez and Sheridan Police Chief Travis Koltiska absolutely lobbying against your Second Amendment rights. That's what they're doing right there. You see, the SAPA bill, it would prevent an unconstitutional seizure of your guns. That's the whole point of it. That when the cops come in, they can't break the law and take your firearms away, which, by the way, Sheridan Press, that happened in your county, in Bighorn. A man was raided, and the ATF, with the assistance of the DCI and Levi Dominguez, took all of this man's guns, took his girlfriend's firearms. And you know what they told him a couple months later? Well, if you want your guns back, you'll have to buy them from the ATF. Now, Levi Dominguez, did you follow the law when you did that? How about you, Travis Koltiska? And why the heck are you lobbying against everybody's Second Amendment rights and lying about it while you're doing it? And the Sheridan Press, that's the picture that you should be printing, not one of a dead police officer that had nothing to do with it. to the bill before my head explodes. And I don't even have my duct tape here to keep all the pieces of my cranium together. And I quote, last week, all 23 Wyoming sheriffs visited Cheyenne to testify against a gun rights bill that they say would inhibit how local law enforcement works with federal agencies. House Bill 130, known as the Second Amendment Protection Act, or the SAPA, would add a civil penalty for local law enforcement for assisting the federal government in seizing guns of citizens. Now think about this. Makes sense to most of us, right? That we need our Second Amendment rights protected from the very people that are supposed to enforce the law. Now, I'm not saying that they do this all the time. Almost all of the police officers that I know absolutely follow the law. Now, maybe they don't prosecute the cases that all of us want, but at the very least, I mean, most of them follow the law. I mean, they do their job. Most police officers are very upstanding, really very moral people. My brother-in-law, for instance, that guy would never violate any of the laws that he's sworn to uphold. And most police officers don't. But there are a few bad apples, and it is the Second Amendment. And so we need a law to protect your Second Amendment rights. Now, most of this thing is already the law. That if a sheriff or chief of police violates your constitutional rights, they can be held criminally liable. And the penalty is a year in jail or a $1,000 fine. That's already in Wyoming law, my friends. What this would do is add a civil penalty to it. And so anytime your constitutional rights are violated, about the only way that you can seek recourse with them is to sue. Most people don't have enough money to hire a lawyer and sue. But at least this gives you an avenue to do that. And it wouldn't allow you to sue individual police officers, which is the lie that Levi Dominguez and Travis Koltiska are advocating for. And once again, Sheridan Press, why aren't you covering that story? Why aren't you covering the story of our local law enforcement people absolutely advocating for a law that would violate that would protect people's constitutional rights? I mean, why aren't you running that story? Because you don't give a crap about the truth. That's why. I got to tell you, my friends, if you want to know why everybody hates the media, this is why. Because we're lied to. The print pictures, and I got another thing coming for the Sheridan Press. If you think that you can ignore my request for comment, go ahead. Go right ahead. Because that article is going live at noon, and I'm going to absolutely excoriate you. And if you don't think that the open range record has a pretty significant reach, you are absolutely mistaken, my friends. How dare you print a picture of a dead police officer and use it for political purposes? It's just absolutely outrageous. Just think about the family of Sergeant Krinke. Think about how you made them feel today. It's just so infuriating, my friends. But there's a reason, yet another reason, why we have the open range record, so that we can tell you the truth. And the truth of this whole thing is that the Sheridan Press today, not all the time, but today, definitely is a bunch of liars. And so let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we'll continue with the program. I'll get some duct tape, put my head back together, and we're going to talk about the Convention of States. A victory! The Constitution, at least in this area, is safe today. Back in a minute. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live. The program you're listening to right now is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, documented to be way more right than anybody in the Wyoming mainstream drive-by media, documented to be right 99% of the time. And you know why? Because I can read. Because I actually do my research and I can read. Oh, and, I have to tell you, I really enjoy all the comments that during the show. I like just seeing what your reactions are, so keep them coming. As it relates to all the comments on this morning's show, the only thing I have to say is, do you mean this picture? Hold on just a second. Just one little second. Again, the weird little thing on the video. Oh, this one, this picture. So this picture is of a pizza party that was happening while the House of Representatives was in session, and the Senate left their members sitting on the floor of the Senate for hours so that they could waste time and not talk about any of the important bills that really matter to you. So let me just give you the rundown here of all of the people that are in this picture. On the far left is Joey Carenti. I got a lot to say about that guy. Next to him is lobbyist Apollo Pazell. And why a lobbyist is in the Senate president's office? That's a good question. We'll have a piece coming on that on the Open Range record probably today. Next to him is Poisonberry Barry Crago, and then Stacey Jones, and then there's Dennis Bo Beitman in the background, stuffing his face with a piece of pizza. And then they're right next to Democrat Chris Rothfuss, and in the middle is Stacey Jones, and the bald guy right in the front. That's Senate Vice President Tim Salazar. They're eating pizza while the Senate is left on the floor. By the way, they didn't buy pizza for the Senate. They had it delivered to the Senate President's office. And while all of the bills that you care about were dying on the floor, these guys were having a pizza party. Fantastic, right? Anyway, so let's go there. Again, I get so fired up, and then my stack of stuff gets confused, and I just have to bounce around. Well, anyway, so what happened last night on the floor is that the House of Representatives went through every bill that was before them, every single bill that was on general file, which those general file, that's first reading, right? All the bills that are eligible for it. They went through every single one of them, and I don't know what time I actually left the House of Representatives, but I know we weren't able to have a nightly news program. We've missed that for a couple nights. We're going to fix that tonight. We are going to have a nightly program, and I'll round some people up to have no idea who it's going to be, but I'll round some people up to sit in for the show. But while the House of Representatives was working, the Senate, well, they were doing something entirely different. They were wasting time, so they wouldn't have to talk about the bills that you actually care about. Now, let me give you an example of what they were doing on the floor of the Senate. And, one of the everybody understands what the word filibuster is, right? That's when one side gets up and they continually give a speech. And it's usually to make a point, right? They're trying to hold up the Senate until a measure gets taken up, a vote that they want the leadership to bring up, or, they're making a point. Well, they also do that just to waste time, because in the Wyoming legislature, there are time limits for just about everything. And the time limit last night, it was the last night for bills on general file, so committee of the whole or first reading. So if it didn't get a first reading last night, it's dead. Can't be brought back up again. Now, again, House of Representatives, they went through every single bill, and Convention of States was the last one. But let me just show you what they were doing. So Kangaroo Mike Giroux got up and he introduced what is called the Revisers Bill. Now, the Revisers Bill, all it is is a correction bill. So, in anything, in any written piece, you're going to have grammatical errors. You're going to have errors in statute. You're going to have punctuation problems. So the reviser's bill just fixes a whole bunch of those. That's all it does. Nothing else is included in there. It's just corrections, right? It's the legislative equivalent of my copy editor. That's all they do. So what Kangaroo Mike Giroux did is he got up on the floor of the Wyoming Senate and he read the entire bill word for word. Now, you might think that when a bill comes up before the legislature that they read the whole thing in. They don't. Okay, so it is assumed that if you are a legislator, that you've already read the piece of legislation that you're voting on. And in Wyoming, that's really easy because we have a couple of rules. In the Constitution, it says we have a single subject rule, which means each bill can only handle one subject. So it prevents what we see in Washington, D.C., of a whole bunch of crap being thrown into one bill, like a good example of that is the Inflation Reduction Act, so-called Inflation Reduction Act. Doesn't have anything to do with the title, and they jammed a whole bunch of things in there. Well, you can't do that in Wyoming. Each bill, one topic, that's it. Well, and so when a bill comes up in the legislature and they don't read the entire bill, they just kind of talk about it, right? So this bill, here's what it does, real brief in general, because, like I said, it's already assumed that that you've read the bill. So here's what Mike Giroux did. He gets up there with the reviser's bill, which nobody really ever questions because it's just spelling corrections and grammar and statutes. That's all it does. And he reads the entire thing word for word. Let me show you what I'm talking about. And this is kind of long, but I want you to get the full picture of what he's doing here. So let's see here. Where to go? Here we go. All right. So this is kind of long, but I want you to watch it so that you get a full picture of what's happening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would let's see. What do I want to do? I want to.
You got to move the bill.
I want to move. Yeah, good. House Bill 44, the reviser's bill.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and ask for your favorable consideration.
Great. You want to explain it to us,
I'd
Senator?
love to.
Yeah.
Also,
On.
there's actually a standing committee amendment I'd like to have read in at this time.
Standing Committee Amendment.
House Bill 44, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1, page 4, line 17.
Just double checking. Was there a Standing Committee Amendment? You said Standing Committee Amendment. There's not. So we have a Committee of the Whole Amendment. Would you like to move that?
I would like to move that.
That sounds like a great idea.
See, they're
Yes,
just
and
wasting
favorable
time.
consideration as well.
Since the Standing Committee didn't even get the chance to do their little amendment on this because this was untimely ripped,
Well, and
just
I-
like Macduff.
Exactly. And
There
so
you go.
now-
Back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring you House Bill 44, the reviser's bill. As you can see, as we take a walk through this wondrous little bill, this is the bill that kind of corrects all corrections, takes care of all our small mistakes, technical corrections, small and large, mostly small. So let's take a look, shall we? Section 1 on page 1 talks about the citations and where we're headed for these corrections. Then if you turn your attention to page 2, it says donation of emergency responder equipment, exemption of civil and criminal liability definitions in relations to other law. You skip down to line 8 and you'll see that we've deleted some of the sites on that page. Continuing down to 1-1-140, public utility exemption from civil liability, catastrophes caused by an act of God. If you'll turn your attention to line 17, you'll see the strike there. Moving on to 123-107, individual liability of members of governmental agencies. Always one of my favorites. You go over to page 3, and we start the strike on line 1.
I can't take this anymore. You get the point. So he read the entire bill to waste time on the floor. And let me tell you about what they were wasting time about. You guys are going to love this. It's great. And it's, I don't understand why all of us poor conservatives think that all these things are important. So here are just some of the bills that the Senate killed last night, while Kangaroo Mike Giroux, that moron from Jackson, was reading the reviser's bill and why they gavelled out. And here's the worst part about it. So I'm sitting up in the House gallery watching the members of the House of Representatives work, and Slithers Nethercott is coming in and out of the House chamber. And according to one representative, whom I'm sure you'll hear this story later on, perhaps next week, perhaps the week after, but she was coming in and reaming members of the House. You have to get your house in order. You guys are going through every bill. Well, of course, because that's their job. So here are the bills that the Senate killed last night. House Bill 84, falsifying election documents. This one was about the Weston County Clerk, Becky Hadlock, in which she submitted a post-election audit that said we didn't have any problems, when it was Becky Hadlock that screwed up the entire election. She lied to the Secretary of State's office. So what that bill would do is create penalties. How about this one? House Bill 10, sexually explicit materials in libraries. This is the porn books bill, the one that would prevent absolute pornography from being in your kid's school. And before you even question me on this, go to the Open Range Record. We've got an article on, I think it's still on the front page, and it shows you what's in the books that are in some of the books that are in your library. And even Julie Jarvis got up on the floor of the House and she said, I finally read the book that we're talking about today. And even I'm going to say this one doesn't belong in schools. And I'll warn you right now, there's some pretty nasty graphic images in that article, but go look it up from yourself. But apparently the Senate, they don't think that that's important nor do they think that your opinion matters. Election hand counting for recounts. What this bill would do is if there is a recount, it would allow you to request a hand count of it. Not in every election, just in recounts. And we already have a statute that says you can only, a recount is initiated, and I don't remember the numbers, but it's like if the election is within 1% or 0.5% or something, but it's a really small number. The Granite Act. Oh, this one's great. So this one would prevent a foreign country from charging you for violating their free speech laws. So this one here, it protects your First Amendment rights. So you can get on Facebook and say whatever you want about the British, and they can't come and fine you. Maybe that's something that we should take a look at. Concealed carry for colleges and universities. You see, if you're 18 years old and you can go serve overseas, and we can put a rifle in your hand and let you defend your country, the theory is that maybe you're responsible enough to carry a gun here. So that's what that one was about. You'll love this one. Stop harm, empower women with informed notices. So this one here requires the government to inform you if you have, inform women. I mean, this is a great bill here, but they killed it. Voter approval for a recreation mill levy. What this bill would do would prevent your local school board from raising your taxes without you getting a say in it. You see, what a lot of school boards are doing across the country is setting up recreation districts and imposing a mill levy on you, which you don't get a say in. This bill would have prevented that. Oh, and then there's this one. Property tax exemptions, effective people's initiative by Representative Tony Locke. This is a great one. This one was to create another tax break and to try to balance it with what is probably going to pass in the next election, which is the 50% reduction in property taxes. But wait, there's more. You're going to love these next ones. Protection of parental rights. Yeah, you see, right now it's really hard for you to protect your children in school, and if the school board is doing something to you, then right now you don't have a recourse. So that particular bill would allow you to sue the school district. But apparently the Senate doesn't really give a crap about that one. Oh, and there's the last one on the list. And here's what Senator Slithers does. The bills that she doesn't like, she puts them at the bottom of the list so that they don't come up. And the last one is Kylie Wall's bill, safeguarding personal expression at K-12 schools. This one says that the school administration can't shove their own beliefs down your child's throat. But all of those bills, all of them, died on the floor of the Senate because Senators Tara Nethercott Slithers, Dennis Bo Beitman, Tim Salazar, Poisonberry Craig, which he's not even in leadership. I don't even know why he's in the group. Stacey Jones were having a pizza party with two lobbyists. Well, excuse me, one lobbyist and one legislative aide that is not an official legislative aide. But anyway, well, I mean, I guess he is if you consider Senator Dennis Beitman, being just able to pay him and say that, well, because Dennis pays him, he gets to be involved in all the laws that affect you. That sounds great, right? So while they were having a pizza party, all of these died. Bills that are important to you. And at the same time, the House of Representatives was working hard going through every single bill. And like I say, I don't know what time I left the House of Representatives last night, but it was pretty late. Couldn't do the live show. So anyway, my friends, the Senate screwing around while your representatives are working. So there you go. Isn't that great? Your tax dollars at work. And I bet you every single one of those people is going to jump up and down and claim that they're conservative. That's what they always do. Let's take a break. We'll be back. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, and this is Wyoming's number one political podcast, number 41 on the list of the top 100 in the entire country. I don't want to hear anything from the Wyoming media. They can't even they don't even try to get a story straight. By the way, that picture I showed you of the little pizza party, the person who took that picture just sent me a note and said there's over 8,200 views on it right now. Do you suppose that maybe Wyoming citizens are a little bit pissed off with how their legislature has conducted themselves this year? Do you suppose that maybe they've just become a little bit irritated with how, there's a sham investigation, which, by the way, Art Washit, buddy, I have been kind of nice to you, even though you drug my name through the mud over and over and over in your sham committee, which I have to thank you. I don't think I could have asked for any better advertising in that committee. If you're unaware of what I'm talking about, in the special ed committee, excuse me, the Special Investigative Committee, in what they thought was going to make my business partner, Rebecca, look bad, they played my interview with her from beginning to end. All 20 minutes of it. Well, actually, I think it was a little north of 15, but they played the whole interview in which I'm grilling Rebecca over this whole, handing out checks on the floor. And what it showed is that there's one real journalist down here in the swamp, and there may only be a couple of real journalists. And you know what? The Open Range Record is the only media outlet that has actually been doing news about what's been going on in the session. And in the middle of doing all of that, we gave you the facts about this. And I'm not bragging here. I'm telling you the God's honest truth. Everybody else, they're focused on this stupid check thing. We didn't. We focused on the news. But in this stupid investigative meeting, they played that interview beginning to end, complete with the branding on it, the Open Range logo. It said Open Range Record on the bottom. And here I am grilling my business partner about this whole thing. I mean, I couldn't have asked. We couldn't have asked for better advertising than right there. I don't know how many people were watching live, but I know after I looked at the views and there were 4,000 views on that video. It's hard to say what it is now because the LSO had to take it down and put a new version back up because they exposed Don Grasso's bank information on YouTube. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. But anyway, Art Washit, man, last night after everything was over, he walked right by me. I'm like, hey, Art, I didn't hear what you said about the investigative committee. When are you going to release the results? And he was just nasty to me. But we're having a meeting right now. You can't come. It's a closed meeting. I didn't ask that. I asked when you're releasing the results. We don't know. Okay, well, it's 4 days. So you probably should follow your own rules. Well, maybe tomorrow. Okay, whatever. But there's no reason to be a jerk, man. I'm not the one that was the chairman of a crappy sham committee where you orchestrated all the questions and every single witness told you what you didn't want to hear. That's not my fault. That's your fault. And it's not my fault that you let Carly Provenza run the show. By the way, you might want to watch what's happening in the House this morning. I'm just saying, might be interesting. Don't know what's going to happen. Actually, I do, but I can't tell you. Anyway, watch what's happening in the House today. It should be entertaining. I will have pictures. I will have audio. I cannot wait. All right, my friends, I have waited long enough. Convention of States was defeated last night on the floor of the House of Representatives. And this is, some people think that this is an obscure bill, and perhaps it is, but you see their advertisements everywhere. The only way to fix America is with a constitutional convention. Yeah, let's open up the Constitution for amendments from anywhere. And that's really going to fix something. And by the way, we don't have a problem with the Constitution. Our problem is we don't follow it. So first, enforce the Constitution that you have. And second, your real problem is with politicians. If you're not going to fix the politician problem, there's no reason to touch that document. And this is, I consider this one to be the most dangerous bill that could come through the legislature because you're screwing with the Constitution. And I know there's probably a lot of people that are listening to this show that are in favor of a convention of states. And I know that everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, that most people that are in favor of this thing are well-meaning. They're just horribly misguided because they bought into the narrative coming from a marketing agency run by Mark Meckler. I mean, over the years on the program, I have played you so much stuff from this Mark Meckler guy. Once, my favorite soundbite is he admits that he's lying about the whole thing. But anyway, last night, floor of the House, we defeated it by a final vote of 21-28. And let me just play for you the final vote, and then I want to play for you what some of the legislators on the floor said. So here's the final vote. Now, let's go with the full vote on this one. Here you go. Take a listen.
By a vote of 18-26, the measure has failed. Having failed a standing division vote, a roll call vote is required. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Element? No. Andrew? Aye. Angelos? No. Banks? Aye. Bear? No. Brady? Aye. Bratton? No. Brown Gary? No. Brown Landon? Byron? Campbell Lisa? Campbell Kevin, excused. Chestick? No. Clauston, excused. Connolly? Davis? Aye. Erickson? Aye. Tyler? Aye. Bornstrom? Aye. Geringer? Aye. Rugenmoss? Aye. Harrelson? No. Harshman? Aye. Heiner? No. Heft? Aye. Jarvis? Aye. Johnson? No. Kelly?
All right. You get the point. Okay. So anyway, we kicked the tail out of the Convention of States resolution, and in the end, the final vote was 21-28. And there's a whole nother storyline underneath this, that a lot of the redcoats left the House of Representatives last night before everything was done. And the rumor is that and it's just a rumor, I haven't been able to prove this, so don't go and say David says this, but the rumor is a bunch of them went to the Wyoming basketball game and just left the floor of the House. And I mean, these are the people that, and I've got a whole list somewhere, but it was Landon Brown, Cody Wiley, Andrew Byron. There was a whole bunch of them. In the end, there was like 13 people missing from the floor of the House. Yeah, they run for office to represent you, and then they just leave. And it doesn't really matter if they went to the basketball game or they went to have dinner or they went to the bar, whatever. It doesn't matter. They weren't there. They weren't voting on this. So let me just play for you now what Representative Pendergraft, Agent 29, had to say on the floor of the House when in reference to this Convention of States. I really Ken speaks very, very eloquently on this whole thing. But let's see here if I've got, here it is. So here is Ken talking about Convention of States on the floor.
Because we got trouble,
in just
folks.
a second.
We need to do something. I believe we need to get this process going. We got a ways to go in the nation. It is time to please consider a convention. Thank you.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to belabor the point. This very body a year ago had long discussion about this, and I doubt that anybody in this room has really changed their mind very much. But I wanted to say a couple of things. I do not believe still that the Constitution is the problem. And when I look around this room and I see the difference in this room today as opposed to 4 years ago or 6 years ago, and I say, we folks, we are proof that we already have term limits. I think we need to put a little more faith in the Constitution. The last two speakers, I consider both of them very dear friends. I also consider them incorrect here, but I want you to think long and hard about the diagnosis. What's really wrong? And I contend that what's really wrong is an apathetic populace that really isn't paying attention to things like the Constitution. And so we go change the Constitution, regardless of what happens. Do you think that's going to change the apathy toward the same? The problem is much bigger than just being able to change some words on a document. And that's where we've got to work, changing the hearts and minds of people.
Here,
Representative
Agent 29, well said. I would say that I couldn't say it better myself, but no, I'm just kidding. Well said. Ken always speaks very eloquently about this, and he nails the problem with the Convention of States, that we don't have a problem with the Constitution. We have a problem with politicians, and I think if you look over the last 4 weeks that we've all been put through by the media, and the media is a big problem too here, but really the problem is politicians, that they don't follow their oaths of office. They tell us things that aren't true. They show up on our doorstep and they promise to do one thing, and they come down here to Cheyenne and they do exactly the opposite. By the way, if you want to see how your representative or your senator performed, go to Evidence-Based Wyoming, and you can see how often they voted with the Democrats and how often they voted with the Republicans. It's pretty easy, and it's all out there in the open. All you got to do is pay attention to it, and don't let these people lie to you. Let me play you another piece of video here. This one, I think that Darren McCann stole the show on this. Now, of course, Darren McCann, his name has been dragged through the mud. People accusing him of taking a bribe, and the media made him the focus of this stupid check incident. I refuse to call it Checkgate because first, this has nothing to do compared to Watergate, and secondly, this whole thing was manufactured. Pretty much manufactured by the media. Now, is it true that my pal Rebecca handed out checks on the floor? Yep. But that's constitutionally protected political free speech. It is absolutely not against the law. Now that they've passed a rule, it is against the rules in the Wyoming legislature to hand out campaign donations on the floor. But it is not. Campaign financing is not against the law. In fact, it's constitutionally protected. And all these people in the media saying, well, if you took a check, you're implicated. That's bullcrap, my friends. That's you exercising your free speech. And if you want to give $10 or $20 or $1,500 to a candidate, that's absolutely your right. And for the media, the Democrats, and a lot of the Republicans to jump up and down and say it's wrong, well, they're just lying to you, and they're trying to protect their own political skin. So here's what Darren McCann said on Convention of States, and I want you to listen to what he says very, very carefully, because he is absolutely 100% right. Here's Darren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was a yes on this last year. I do believe in the Constitution, but my confidence in people has been completely destroyed over the last 2 weeks. That's what I don't have confidence in. We've changed a lot since our founders came up with these documents. We're no longer the God-believing nation that we used to be, not even remotely close. I have every confidence in our founders and the Constitution. It's the people I don't have the confidence in. I will be a no.
Here, right on, right on. That is one of the biggest problems with this entire thing. And if you think that there's a problem with campaign financing now, if you think a $1,500 check handed to a candidate to help with an election that is probably going to cost him $50,000 is the biggest problem, you are out of your mind. Did you know that there are countries in the world that think that they should have a say in our elections? Did you know that? And their argument is kind of sound. I mean, it's misguided with our elections business, but if you think about it, what they say is every decision that America makes affects different countries, other countries. And think about it, that's absolutely true. Everything we do affects the rest of the world in ways that their own country couldn't even possibly imagine. So why shouldn't they have a say in our elections? Now, we think that that's a bizarre idea, and it is. There's no way that we shouldn't let anybody who isn't a citizen vote. But if you think that $1,500 check that happened on February 9th is the biggest problem, now just imagine what would happen if you opened up the Constitution. Imagine how much money would come flooding into that convention, how much advertising there would be, lobbyists running around. It would be absolute pandemonium. Another example is the Supreme Court election in Wisconsin that we had not too long ago. That was $100 million that got spent in one election, one Supreme Court election. That was just a state election. That didn't have anything to do with the country. Just think about the amount of money that would be flooding into this just to convince people to vote one way. And here's the other one, and I thought about this the other day. I mentioned this in my committee testimony, that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And in Article 5, it says that there's only two things that you can't do with a convention of states or with amending the Constitution. And those are, you can't outlaw slavery before 1808. We're a little bit past that one, so I don't think that one applies. And the other thing that it says you can't do is deprive a state of suffrage in the Senate. Other than that, you can do anything you want. And so everybody down here, in the swamp, they will tell you that about the supremacy clause, how the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Well, that means that Wyoming can't pass a law that exceeds the Constitution. So if the Constitution says, hey, there's not, the only thing you can't do is these two things, Wyoming can't pass a law that says, hey, you can only keep it to term limits or federal restraint or restraining the spending. That doesn't matter. None of that matters. What matters is what the Constitution says, which that's the very document that they're trying to change. And one more thought on this, and then we're going to move off this topic. But Article 5 in the Constitution really is it's the axe behind the glass at the back of the room that says break glass in case of emergency. Most of the time, an axe is too blunt of a weapon that you can't use it to fix your car. I mean, it'll fix it all right, but it won't run anymore. You can't use an axe to fix a problem with the law. The reason why it says break in case of emergency is that's the last resort you have, because you have to have an axe to break down the door. That's what Article 5 is in the Constitution. Our founders were smart enough to know that there may come a time when it's all crap and it's all lost, and the only thing you can do is to alter the Constitution and start over, or add amendments to it. That's what Article 5 is. It's the axe behind the glass to break in case of emergency. Well, fortunately, last night on the floor of the House, our representatives were smart enough to know, at least some of them. You know what? I need to back up on that because it's not that the people that advocate for this aren't smart. I think that they're very well-meaning people. However, I think they're horribly misguided. One of the representatives last night said, well, is there risk involved? Yeah, of course there's risk. We're talking about the Constitution, my friends. Any risk is too great. And I, for one, will never, I will fight everything in me to prevent the Constitution from being destroyed by well-meaning people that really, frankly, don't have any idea what they're doing. Well, fortunately, we beat it this time around, and we don't have to worry about it until next year. Oh, and by the way, the best part of this whole thing is the president of Convention of States Action, Mark Meckler, was in the House last night, and he got to watch us kill his beloved Convention of States resolution. So, Mark, I love you, buddy. I know you're probably already on a plane out of here, but you should have stuck around. I was going to try to talk to you, but you ran away. I wonder why. Interesting. All right, moving on. We got another law that did go through the Senate, and it's the heartbeat bill. This one is Chip Nyman's bill to outlaw abortions after a heartbeat can be detected, which, by the way, if you didn't know, is pretty soon. It's pretty early on in a pregnancy. So there's a piece from Jonathan Lang, who writes for the Cowboy, which, by the way, if you go to the Cowboy's website, there are very, very few articles of what's actually happening down here in Cheyenne. It couldn't be, I suppose, that they're focusing on Checkgate. I really hope they're watching the House today. I really do. Don't worry. We'll have complete coverage of it so that we can tell you about their epic failure. But anyway, here we go from Jonathan Lang. And let me just read you the first couple paragraphs here. Late last month, the Wyoming Supreme Court refused the petition of the Attorney General's office to rehear the case State v. Johnson. In 3 sentences, the court turned a deaf ear to the cries of the unborn. Quote, in practical terms, 4 members of the court have rewritten the laws of the state of Wyoming. They have incorrigibly insisted that their January 6th opinion replace real lawmaking. Without the benefit of a single vote of the people or their elected representatives, they have put Wyoming in the class of states like New York, California, and others that are most hostile to the rights of the unborn. And not to put too fine a point on it, the laws on abortion right now in Wyoming are pretty much the same as they are in North Korea. That's absolutely true. Abortion is legal right now, almost up to the moment of birth. It is, God help us with what our laws are right now. And I mean, it's absolutely horrible. Lang continues. Now that legal minds have had a few weeks to digest their opinion, they're seeing an alarming fact that the majority, quote, held that Wyoming's 22 abortion laws are unconstitutional, but it did not hold that the repeal of the previous laws was unconstitutional. That has enormous unintended consequences. If the court wanted to only withdraw those protections for the unborn that were strengthened by the Life as a Human Right Act, they wildly overshot their target. Rather, the Johnson opinion nuked previous protections that had been written into law incrementally over the decades. In one fell swoop, Wyoming babies have been tossed into the same bin as the babies in New York and California. But the heartbeat bill, if it goes forward and is signed by Governor Gordon, which all the indications are that he is going to sign that bill. I mean, he's been pretty outspoken on the whole thing, so I don't see any reason why he wouldn't sign it. But I pray that he does, because I mean, this is a hard one for me because. I mean, abortion is not a hard one for me. I'm pro-life 100%. Life begins at conception, period. End of sentence. But I'm not a politician. I'm a guy that owns a giant podcast and a media outlet. So I don't make the laws. I just talk about them. But I understand that politically some of these things are infeasible. That we obviously can't get a ban on abortion. But we did get it through the legislature and the governor signed it, or it became law anyway. We can't get it through the courts. And so there are just some things that are politically impossible right now. Well, that doesn't mean that we can't work on them. And it doesn't mean that we can't put restrictions on different practices. So hopefully the heartbeat bill goes to the governor's desk and he signs it, and we can continue this process all along. But because fighting for the unborn, my friends, this is something that we can't let up on. As conservatives, we tend to have the attitude that, okay, we got to win. Now we can all go home. Yeah, this isn't one of those cases. The left isn't going to stop, and we can't stop, and I'm not going to stop, my friends. Well, that pretty much does it for today's installment of the podcast. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk again on tomorrow. We'll have another live program. We'll also have one on Friday. Even though I'll be packing up to go back home, I cannot wait. One more comment here. We got one comment from Joseph. He says, do you think the heartbeat bill will end up in court like the others? My guess would be yes. I think it probably will. The left doesn't stop, but the point is we can't give up on this. Anyway, my friends, I'm off to the legislature. I cannot wait to find out what's going to happen, and I'll have all of the details for you tomorrow, the yummy, yummy details. But for now, my friends, from the depths of the Middle Swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne, I'm David Iverson, and this is the one and only Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.